Hey guys, I want to talk about Cape Town, the water crisis, water zero. For South Africans, this will be well understood, but anywhere else in the world, they won't know what this is about and what's happening. Essentially, Cape Town, or the Cape Province, of which Cape Town is the primary city in Southern Africa, often known as the Western Cape, one of the most touristy places, the home of the Table Mountain, the two oceans, more of that later, the Atlantic and the Indian, where they meet, Hout Bay, the wineries, Stellenbosch, Paarl, the Cederberg, Franschhoek, the mountains, etc., etc. Something that has to be mentioned, the Sole Province, I think I might even be incorrect on that, but for a long time, the Sole Province, that was a Democratic Alliance, which, while it has a indigenous African leader, for want of a phrase that's politically correct, black African leader, it's been the party of the whites, often seen. It used to have white leadership. It is reaching out on a far broader scale to African, black African. We're all African in that sense. But anyway, the crisis has been that Cape Town is running out of water. Now, this is a crazy situation to be in. And while there are the likes of the Karoo and some semi-arid deserts inland, for a place like Cape Town to be running out of water should never, ever, ever actually happen. And it's one of the most important, outside of Gauteng, which is the small place that covers Joburg and Pretoria, and the historical mining area, which has got the biggest CBD and also the biggest population concentration. The Cape is one of the biggest contributors to the gross national purse. You know, if you want to do your shark diving, you want to climb, ride bikes, bicycles, mountain biking, walking, drinking wine, etc. It's all there. Anyway, let's get on with the story. I suppose how can we have a lack of water and in the Cape? So they've had a reasonable lack of rain, but dams have been drying up, and plans and infrastructure have just failed to materialize. And one of the things I want to just work through with a couple of sources that I've got here about how this is not actually about a weather-related aspect, and it's not just about Cape Townians, people that live in Cape Town, who are at the sharp end of exceedingly draconian water restrictions at the moment. I was there not so long ago, and you know, there was no watering at all, and they were only on down to about 50 litres a day. Now that doesn't sound like a big restriction, but it certainly is when you shower and bath, and now there's even more draconian aspects coming in. So the regional Cape Town government is getting a lot of stick, but actually the story runs a lot deeper. It's not really about water, in fact, although at the sharp end it is. This is a power battle. A fact that has largely been ignored and is out of sight and mind for most people in this crisis, and I'm reminded of the saying of politicians, never let a good crisis go to waste, is that the bulk water supply in the country is not controlled by people in the Cape Province legislature or public sector that can work on it. It is actually under the control, believe it or not, of the National Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation, under a minister in the ANC government. So the ANC has been largely losing support, and there's other new areas in certain parts of Johannesburg, the Eastern Cape, where the original party of Nelson Mandela just keep bleeding out support, mainly on account of absolutely diabolical governmental standards, corruption, wholesale emptying out the vault, etc., etc. Anyway, quite recently, around about the end of last year, Water Affairs sent a letter to Helen Zille, who's the lady who runs the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape, advising that government had appointed Umgeni Water out of KwaZulu-Natal. And I stayed also and lived a few years not far from Umgeni, and and used to train at a gym right on the river there, and that is in Natal, totally different area, to solve the problem by building a desalination plant in Cape Town. So let's understand, Cape Town, the city, and the Cape Province is on the Horn of Africa and is surrounded by ocean. And ocean, as you know, that only ocean can be, with God knows how much actual available seawater for desalination plants. So this should never have been or become a problem. The directive that is coming out of the National Government of Sanitation and Water appointing Mngeni gives the impression that they are on it and they're being decisive and they're taking action, and that this is, they're on the job. But in actual fact, in this case, what's actually happening is they brought in a person by the name of Dudu Myeni. Dudu Myeni is a lady who was brought in, who worked on other state-based enterprises. Apart from the water industry, she was previously in South African Airways, which has been, as state-owned enterprises known as SOES, completely obliterated and financially destroyed, leading to the huge loans, bailouts, etc. So South African Airways, the airways that actually used to win quite a few awards, had a great wine list, of course, and used to, bat heads with British Airways and Virgin on the popular London-Joburg route, etc., and flew planes in many different places, regularly used to upgrade to top-end planes. It's largely reduced to an exceedingly poor, over-indebted company. She's been the master of obfuscation. For those of you who need a thesaurus, that means basically misdirection, deception and dishonesty, and all-round general deceit, this lady. And she's meant to portray the government essentially as taking charge of a situation that should never have come to pass. Much like, and this has great parallels to the great Eskom, which was an absolute powerhouse, excuse the pun, that sold electricity, exceedingly well run, exceedingly well planned, and actually sold electricity in the bad old days under the apartheid regime government to Zimbabwe and other surrounding sub-Saharan African nations. Since the ANC took over, actually many will know of the power outages, switching off mines, the key cogs of a country that had a commodity history, and restricting how much they can do business, turning people down, load shedding essentially on an ongoing basis. Now that one is largely played out. Now we have the water crisis and we have the Cape as the main sufferers. Mngeni Water might need itself a 3 billion bailout. So there's been a huge hollowing out of state-owned enterprises, which has taken place under the Zuma government, and with a bit of help from conniving crooks like the Guptas that now have moved millions into Dubai and largely have got away with wholesale theft in Southern Africa. So you have a patent lady who is hopelessly tainted with destroying state-owned enterprise, being sent in to solve a water crisis in KwaZulu-Natal, running it from KwaZulu-Natal, supposedly for the Cape region. It's an absolute laughable state of affairs, and we can only assume that this is going to end up exceedingly badly. But in truth, the whole notion of how we've been managed in Southern Africa is pretty diabolical. From the sort of the Mbeki era, where he spoke about cures for HIV/AIDS involving beetroot and cabbage, and escrowed the then available treatments for people that were late stage, we probably lost the guesstimations of about 300,000 lives for this vegetable cure for HIV. We've since seen them turn into mega fans of the farmer and wholesale switch and be big proliferators of the antivirals that are required for AIDS cure. So you're seeing the absolute history of utter mismanagement starting probably under there. But the slippery slope has come with Jacob Zuma's government. And I am afraid to say that a long time ago I did a YouTube hoping for the best for Southern Africa. As someone who's born in Cape Town and speaks with a South African accent and spent the first 32 years of his life there, I always said 3 generations from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. It's kind of how people who build fortunes, then in 3 generations they're all lost. The goodwill created by Mandela created a rather bland second generation in Mbeki, where there were already sleeping concerns coming out and a lack of infrastructural investment or planning or understanding of even the need, into the third and final, where the rot just precipitates and capitulates down in the Jacob Zuma case. Now, he's in ultimate power of the ANC government and is supported by a minority, the smallest margin of most of those belonging to the ANC political party. So when you read and talk about the crisis in the Western Cape, you ask yourself, who stands most to lose by not finding a solution, and who stands to gain most by not being found out? Now, the ANC largely loathe and utterly resent the notion of democracy when it's not them that gets voted in. In short, Gauteng, and where the ANC still have majorities, and they are getting thinner and slimmer, they resent what is seen as almost the Western Cape breakaway from ANC rule and their lack of traction there. And it's just in terms of ethnicities, they're whites, they're blacks, and they're what's known as Cape Coloureds, which kind of mixed race in other languages, and each have their own sort of subculture, and the Cape Coloureds themselves are very anti, broadly, the ANC. That's a generic term. The whites are, and even those that are from the region right the way to the Eastern Cape have become a little jaded in terms of the Liberation Party and its antics. So what are we getting here? There's a crisis unfolding in the Western Cape, and it's attributable to a corrupt and dysfunctional ANC government at the head, which is squeezing, in essence, the nuts of Cape Town. They want disorder in Cape Town. They want to reflect the local government, which is not of their party, in the poorest possible light. It is of benefit. It's kind of like Obama's Democrats focusing on conservative groups for tax investigations. It's kind of like Labour moving the BBC and all the state-based enterprises up north, where they have large traction so that they can win, give jobs to voters. Only this is on a far bigger, more evil level, in that it's absolutely denial of resources, control over bulk water outside, and actually drying out the Cape. There is no shortage of water. There's a lot of these big New World Order, the great wars will be fought over water. No, it won't. There's more water than we know what to do with. There's only a distribution issue and people and incompetence. That's it, and intent. This one falls into the category of both incompetence and intent in terms of the Cape, because it shouldn't have happened. It's malinvestment, it's lack of investment, it's fraud, hollowing out all the capital for investment, and a bit of incompetence as well, for the people to only realize the problem as it's staring them in the face, and they have a relatively dry season that immediately exposes that lack of margin. So it's just another opportunity to open a new front in a political, economic, and ideological war based in race, dogma, and hate. And the thing I've learned is that it's apparently only whites that are racist. So you might have to rethink that one, because they want the Cape to fail. They want the people in the Cape to fail. They want riots, and they want the current government to, local government and regional government, to fail, because it's not them. And they embarrass the North with their better living standards, and it's time they had a crisis. And they're quite prepared to pull the country's reputation through the sewer, create immense amount of duress, pain, suffrage, and inconvenience on the citizens of their own country. So this is kind of virtually my own shock and horror at the treatment of Luhansk and Donetsk in Ukraine, where essentially Ukrainian soldiers are sent to kill fellow Ukrainian citizens. This is the sort of civil equivalent of that military level. My dream for the Western Cape, and for Southern Africa as a whole, my dream for it, and it is very far-fetched and exceedingly unlikely, is that the Western Cape could secede from the Republic of South Africa. And so other provinces that are well-governed, well-run, non-ANC could secede too. And that way we could ring-fence the cesspool and the voters that keep placing in power the utterly corrupt, utterly thieving ANC government. And for those that believe Cyril Ramaphosa will be this amazing new broom, this amazing new sweeping entity that will cast all away. In Africa, you don't invite corruption in to the scale that the Zumas have done and reverse that in a single generation. I'm afraid there's very few African countries that have even succeeded in reversing it at all. I've ridden motorcycles to Zimbabwe where they all had stickers on them: "We do not do corruption, anything I do that asks for money," etc. And even those attempts, unfortunately, have not turned. This was at Border Patrol when we went in and out, etc., etc. This unfortunately still hasn't stopped the tide of a totally lost, immense nation that was a breadbasket in the southern African realm, that had incredible tobacco crops, agriculture, and an amazing scenery and lifestyle. That country is gone and has been gone for a long, long time. And you don't turn it around. You don't turn it around. You don't have an Ian Smith, a Robert Mugabe, and then go back to Ian Smith-like levels of infrastructure, installment, and general attempt at integrity. Far from perfect. Let's leave aside, and I don't mean to belittle this, the fact that Smith and even more importantly the apartheid government of South Africa had policies that weren't inclusive of local indigenous people, which is obviously a clear failure morally. But the result of this has been unfortunately predicted and been predictable, and that is complete lack of governance, complete corruption, complete emptying out of the vault. And actually what you have is a self-created crisis that is actually a power struggle by a super government that has got strings and control over key points of services in an area that they no longer want to see succeed, and are quite happy to create pain and suffrage. So my message, I suppose, to the Cape people is be strong, become independent. The whole thing of the Reset Sniper and what we do is about becoming mutually independent of governments and state. Repeatedly I have observed government does not work for the people. Government, and it's not just the ANC and Southern Africa, government and central bankers do not work for you. Please understand this, otherwise you're in a fool's paradise. The more self-reliant and independent you are, the safer you will be in supply of basic services. Everyone in South Africa should have, and I did this in the UK and I'll do it anywhere where I live, 10,000 litre at least underground water, rainwater harvesting tanks. You should have it on all your roofs along with all your solar panels. You should look to be independent entirely of all state structures that will fail. And this is not a message just for South Africa. This is not a message just for people in Cape Town. You want to capture every drop that falls on your roof before they make it illegal, and they're coming for that, by the way. Hence all these narratives of water scarcity and the Nestle CEO saying you're not entitled to the water that falls on your garden, and making statements like that as a member of the Bilderberg group who wants another tax and usury extraction point off citizenry, like the rest of the Trojan horse and parasitic governments and central bankers that they be, and corporatocracy heads. So understand, while you still can, you should harvest your own power, your own water. You should distill it. You can heat it up with your surplus of your solar power. You can make it super clean. Rainwater generally is, but if it comes to a polluted city, it might not be as so much. And you should have your own provision. If you are still in a position where you can get a borehole, get a borehole before they tell you your land doesn't own the water that's under it. They'll come for that too. But get self-reliant and recognize always ask the question, who does this benefit? Who's got the grievance and who does it benefit not to solve versus who does it not benefit to solve? It doesn't benefit the Democratic Alliance in the Cape. Keep voting them in. Do not reward the ANC or other parties for the inappropriate behavior, basically squeezing your nuts. Keep the ANC out, which is the larger party that is holding the strings to bulk water supply in the Cape and is looking to direct that from the Tau. What? How? Why? I'm gaining water and put in, which is largely a Zulu area, and Zuma Zulu, and putting in Dudu, whatever her face name is, in there, who broke already everything she's touched so that she can continue to break anything that could resemble a solution for all the people in the Cape. Get independent at a regional level for your water supply. Salination tanks, guys, if you own plots and farmers, I would certainly in the area say, get independent of government, get salination, make the investment. Once you've done it once, you're going to be ripped off on your water pricing anyway. Desalination can be exceedingly affordable. It's already at roughly the same cost as what you're being charged metered. Become your own supplier on all fronts, on all things. The African premium is there. And let me also say to all those that are shaking their head and going, oh, Africa, let me say to you, you just have a more sophisticated version of the scam in your bankers, slightly less overt and extreme, but nonetheless still there. Self-reliance is the way. This is the liberty way, the way of the libertarian. This is Ayn Rand. This is the facts. Other people are playing power games ahead of you and squeezing each other's nuts, and you are the people that carry. Every time the citizenry carries the pain and suffrage inflicted by people that are not solution orientated but are seeking ultimate power. Power begets more power, begets ultimate power, begets ultimate corruption, and those that are left waiting for the crumbs to fall off the table are forgotten while the arm wrestling continues on the table for the full prize, to loot and to parasitically Trojanize themselves in as many ways as possible in an extraction scheme, both of tax nature, of emptying out state enterprises, leaving them hollowed out with a loan to the hill banking system destined to fail. All these attributes actually belong in all aspects of our global states. So take the parody, take the parallel, and work on your self-reliance. And that's my message. Cape Townian guys, get independent, get your own water, get your rain harvesting in, do it now, and also get those big soak tanks in, get your solar panels up, get off the grid. That's Francis, the Reset Sniper. If you want to be part of our amazing community, develop building wealth through crypto and other trading opportunities, and establishing diversity for the Great Reset that will come to us all, you can find us on themarketsniper.com. I hope this is useful for you, and good luck.